Welcome into the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by DraftKings Sportsbook. Use code DNVR when you sign up for a new account, and you get amazing odds boosts. I'm your host, Rudo, joined by AJ Haefele. We've been looking at the Avs depth chart for a while now. But
all week.
Yeah, all week, basically. Now we're finally getting into our top-ranked prospects in the system. It should be a fun one. Always excited to talk prospects. I know our super hardcore fans always like to hear us talk about it as well. So
yeah, I know that there are some out there that just their eyes just glaze over when you get into prospect stuff. Totally understandable.
Yeah, definitely a reasonable take, especially when we start at the bottom of our lists about guys that are 3+ years away from the NHL. But
yeah, where it's like, well, you don't really need to know this guy's name unless you're really into stuff like this, like we are.
Yeah, so definitely a specific niche, but I'm excited to get into it. We do need to lay a few ground rules down.
Yeah.
For starters, we're calling a prospect any player that is 23 and younger and has less than 15 NHL games played.
We drew that line for a very specific and obvious reason. In that Martin Kaut, still a prospect at 14 games. Bowen Byram, not a prospect at 19 games.
Indeed. Because let's face it, if Byram counted as a prospect, he'd just be number one, and it would move everyone down the list, and that would be all that was. So
yeah, for all intents and purposes, Bowen Byram has graduated. So that's why we did that.
Yep, no argument on that one. Byram's going to be a full-time NHLer, so.
Yep.
Moving on from that one, AJ, I took a little peek at our list, and I think they're fairly similar. So there's not going to be anything too off the wall today, but should be interesting to go through some of these kids and
yeah,
where they're at.
I thought we were going to have a little more disagreement at the top, especially 2 and 3. I was very surprised to find out that you and I agreed on that.
Really?
Yeah, I thought that those would have been flipped on your list.
No,
I think on most lists they probably would be.
I'm too much of a fanboy.
Okay.
I guess we'll see. To Gregor's meme point here, we also did not include goalies because it's impossible to rank a goalie against skaters. It's just can't. I don't ever know where to place them.
I don't know what to do with them. So yes, Eustace Annunen and Trent Miner are not on my list.
Yep. If you want our goalie ranking list, it goes Annunen 1, Miner 2, I guess Smakov 3.
That's it. That's exactly how it goes.
Yeah. So completely separate list there, but we well, I guess I don't know whose list we're starting with, but let's bring up the first 5 of one of our lists. It doesn't really matter who's. All right, mine. So from 15 to 11 for me is Lieberman, Klerman, Buyalski, Zaravyov, and Bocage. Let's start with Lieberman just because I know AJ didn't put Lieberman on his list. Look, the dudes at 15 are a long way from the NHL. Far from any guarantee that Lieberman even gets a contract, but I still like the skill level there. I think there's some talent to be had from an offensive defenseman that deep down the list. You know, if he gets an ELC, I'd consider it a win for a pick from the 7th round. So
yep, he was 16 on mine.
Yeah, I think Weiss was 16 on mine too. So, which we'll get to in a second. Klerman obviously has earned his ELC. Will play in the AHL this year, most likely. Gonna get a feel for what he has a little bit more in pro hockey this year, but
kind of a surprising ELC last year.
Yeah, it was a little bit of a surprise. One thing I will say for Klerman is at least until Drew Helison shows up. Right now, he kind of fits a role in the Avs pro systems that no one else really does as far as that defensive defenseman role. So that gives him a little bit of opportunity in that one specific area that I think he can provide something that fair amount of other players probably don't. Again, until Helison shows up, who we'll talk about later. But it's something a little bit unique as far as that is concerned, at least in the pro systems. At 13, I went with Buyalski.
So just for the record, I know we'll show mine here in a minute, but there are some guys that we don't need to talk about more than once.
Right.
Here at the bottom of the list, where we take a bunch of time. I had Klerman at 15. Lieberman not on my list, so we're pretty much in agreement there. I have Buyalski at 13 on my list as well. Or I have him at 14.
Close enough, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
So Buyalski, lots to be excited about there. With the size and the skating, but he turns 21 this month. He might have already turned 21. And it's just there's no history of these guys being successful.
Way too many question marks about his future too, right?
Yeah.
Like, we don't know. Step one for him before I could move him any higher on my list is going to get into college. What does his game look like against other college players that are his age or older?
Yeah, as a near 21-year-old in the USHL, you have to kind of wonder, like, And
secondarily, there he's going to University of Vermont, which I don't really know anything about their program.
Yeah.
So,
yep.
We'll have to wait and see what that program looks like and what his fit in that program even is.
Yeah, and then you have Zhiravalov. You have Danila Zhiravalov at 12. I have him at 11. Truth be told, I would have had him at 12. I just didn't want to retype his name when I forgot a guy and had to move everybody down.
Yeah.
So we agree on where Zhiravalov goes as well, but that also tells you, like, the fact that I just didn't want to retype a guy's name. We have them all in tiers. Pretty similar there. I would say these bottom three guys are in the lowest tier.
Yep.
And then there's a line there, and then Zhiravalov, and then you have Alex Bocage at 11. I have him higher than that, but I'm curious why you've got him down here below. And I know you really like Colby Ambrosio more than I do, but to have him ahead of Bocage surprises me a little.
I really like Ambrosio's upside. I really like his style of game. I think it fits very well with the Avalanche. With Ambrosio, like 100%, I get not putting him as high as I do because it's a bet on him taking the next steps, right? He has to come through in his sophomore year, and he's going to have to basically be the dude in Boston. I mean, I'm sure, though, I haven't looked at their incoming class. I'm sure it's a bunch of talented players.
A bunch of studs, like it always is.
Yeah, right. But he's going to have more opportunity than he did this year, as we saw, especially when Newhook was out of the lineup. Ambrosio at times kind of faltered a little bit last year, but as
a freshman, like you expect,
right, exactly,
you expect some stumbles as like a freshman. He's undersized even for the college game. That's a guy that he's going to have to bulk up a little bit more. Some of the conversation that we had about Tyler Weiss over the years as well. He just needs to eat some pizza Friday nights with the boys. He just needs to eat some pizza.
Hard when he's, I guess Ambrosio doesn't have Crohn's disease, but for Bocage's side of that argument, look, not faulting the shot at all. He has a ridiculous shot. It's an NHL skill. We've talked about it before. If you want to put him higher strictly on that, I totally understand. But
it's an NHL tool that he has now.
My problem with Bocage, and the reason I couldn't put him higher, is I still have serious questions about his skating. And he's someone that, if he shows it in the AHL this year, could jump way up my list, because if he can still fire pucks and get to open areas with less time in the AHL, where it's not QMJHL defenses, where he, especially this last season, he was strictly just too good for that league. Like, it didn't, those defense weren't challenging him at all. He could score basically whenever he wanted. So he needs to prove it at the next level for me, for me to have him higher on my list, especially his skating. I want to see him be able to keep up with professional level skating.
So I get the concerns about that because we have the same concerns really about what he needs to do in pro hockey to prove that he's going to be the real deal. But I mean, we're talking about. I mean, this kid is 6'2", maybe 6'3".
Sure.
He's 200 pounds. Great. That's great size. And he has he's unbelievable shooter. Just a lethal NHL shot that's ready to rock now. And those are he's got NHL size, he's got an NHL shot. He's not really much of a playmaker.
Yep.
He's not a guy that there's not a whole lot of make other guys better around him.
Sure.
Defensively, he doesn't use the size very effectively. There could be a bit of an on-off switch there. And I would like to see him engage a little more consistently. But really, the biggest question is, it's the skating, and it's how does that shot play when he does not have the time and space. But for me, I'm higher on him because I just think Bocage is for real. I think that that's a guy that I don't think it's out of the realm of possibility that he significantly outplays Sampo Ranta this year. And that and that he's a guy that, I mean, look, I want to see what it looks like, but there's NHL tools there to work with. And you're talking about getting to the next level and translating to some translatable skills here that he's got. He's not going to be overpowered in the NHL. He's going to continue to grow into his body a little bit and get stronger. And he's already in a good place physically. And just the shot is just so good. And as much as I like what Ambrosio did at Boston College, I mean, as a true freshman on a pretty stacked BC team, for him to throw up 15 points in 24 games, it was eyebrow raising for a guy that I was kind of iffy on going into the year, but Ambrosio is still on the small side. I mean, we're still talking, that kid is 5'8".
Yep, he's small.
He is 5'8", but he's 170 pounds already. And if he can continue to add a little bit of weight, he also plays with attitude. And that's the thing that I really liked, is that people in the USHL talked about he's got a really good shot, but he's also feisty. And I think that's interesting. He's also small. So and he's a small center.
Yeah,
is what I'm getting at here. He's a small center, and that's a short history of success for those guys.
Sure, I won't make any argument there. And maybe part of the side of Bocage that puts me off it a little bit is for him, if he gets into a situation where all of a sudden his shot can't be the weapon that we thought it could be, because the shot's good enough, but if defense are closing too quickly on him or if he can't find the open space effectively, we have not seen a lot of him playing effectively in situations like front of the net, positional battles, where he can use that size to his advantage and finish plays, I suppose.
Yeah, but you look in the NHL and there are guys like that dotted all over the league.
Sure, absolutely.
The big separator is that usually those guys are a little more naturally mobile than Bocage is.
Yeah. The skating, there really wasn't a very big step this year for Bocage's skating, which you were hoping to see. But there's still time, obviously. Maybe he comes into camp this year and has a little bit of something more. Obviously, look.
I really want to see it live, man. I'm really hoping at the prospect tournament in Arizona, I really hope that we see that thing, that we see that shot get unleashed and that his skating is to the point where it's like, you know what, this isn't great.
It just has to be good enough.
But that's what I'm really hoping for. I really want to see that kid live.
Yeah, confirmed.
I sort of skipped over Jaravalov a little bit because we've talked about him quite a bit this week.
About him a lot on the defensive show. The short version is, if he's willing to come over at the end of this year, it's going to be an interesting conversation. Really, over the past couple of years in the KHL, has created a fairly well-rounded game for himself, but is not like a superstar at anything.
Yeah.
So
he started out when they drafted him. He was more of an offensive defenseman, and he's rounded out his defensive game quite a bit. He's also grown into his body nicely as he's gotten into his 20s. He's grown into himself a little bit. He looks comfortable in his own skin. He's not strictly a puck mover anymore. He plays more of a smart defensive game than your physical, because he is undersized.
Yep.
But it's not such a dynamic offensive game. It doesn't like stand out. It's efficient and it's effective.
Consistent, yeah.
Yeah, and that's sort of his knock, is that he's the big question with him in the NHL is what gets him through every game. You know, there isn't one thing that he's going to be able to fall back on.
For sure.
So, and for me, it's I have him as low as I do, because I'm not convinced he's coming across the pond. And for the record, that's why Kovalenko's not on my list at all. It's not about him as a player. He would be in my top 10 if it was all about the player, but I don't think Kovalenko wants to come over.
Dude just signed a 3-year deal in Russia, so
that removes him effectively from serious immediate consideration.
Yep.
Whereas Ravelov is on, he's got 1 year left, and then we'll see.
I mean,
so
if Kovalenko plays out that contract, he'd be 24 by the time he's coming over. So
yeah, and with Kovalenko, like the one thing I will say, those contracts almost always have NHL out clauses.
Of course,
but the Avs have to know that that's an NHL out clause. That he's not the power of his 3-year deal in the KHL is that he's not coming over for, I'll play for the Eagles for a few months and then we'll just hope that I get better and that I'll hope I get called up or whatever.
Yep.
He's not leaving the security of his situation unless he's getting an NHL job. And so I don't know that the Avs are in a position to do that for him. So I don't have him on my list at all, entirely because of his contract status.
Same. Real quickly on Tyler Weiss, since you had him on your list and I didn't.
Really just, I'm sure he'll be thrilled about this on a personal level, but really just a reward for continuing he's gotten a little bit better every year. Had by far his most dynamic season. He was playing on the top line of on the left wing at Uno, and 23 points in 26 games. That's what's got to happen for a kid his size, because he is tiny, very lanky. I mean, we're talking 5'11". He got to college at 150 pounds. So we'll see. They don't update these things every year, so I'm curious what his real weight actually is right now.
Well, I mean, we knew he struggled with putting on weight because of Crohn's disease, as I was saying earlier, but now that he knows he has it, it's probably a little bit easier for him.
Yeah, and going into his senior year in college, I mean, we said it was going to take him all 4 years. So, he is a dynamic skater. He's got a real suddenness to him offensively, and he's way more playmaker than shooter. I don't think he's going to score many goals in pro hockey at all on any level, but he's a very good playmaker, very good skater. And I think that I just felt like with Kovalenko, with Lieberman, those were the guys that I was kind of fighting for on my list here. And I thought Weiss had the better year, plus think that there's a decent chance he could get a contract if he has a good year.
All right. So that's our bottom 5 of our top 15 for each of us. We are sponsored by Ball. Corporation right now. They are hiring for their Golden plant. You can text Golden to 77222 or go to jobs.ball.com to get your application. They're an awesome employer. They give a living wage. They treat their employees well, including decent benefits and all of that business. So it's a great opportunity. They also do things like give you classes to fill in gaps in what might be your resume as far as skills are concerned. So be sure to hit them up today. Take advantage of the opportunity. They are the world's largest aluminum can and packaging manufacturer, and they also do many other things as well, including some work in the aerospace industry. So they have a bunch of opportunities. They're big believers in sustainability and all of that. They have their floor manufacturing positions available for production technicians and other roles as well. So check out Ball today if you're looking for a job, and they can hook you up. And then once you start rolling in some money from Ball, maybe put a little bit into DraftKings Sportsbook. Right now, all you have to do is put $1 in when you sign up for a new account with DNVR code, and you can bet that $1 on any college game. And you get $200 just for placing the bet. Don't have to win. Doesn't matter when it happens. It's just as soon as you make the bet, they give you $200 in free bets. So DraftKings has you covered. You can make a ton of bets with their $200 on whatever sport you prefer, whether that be more college football, basketball, hockey, baseball. I know all the future bets are rolling in hockey right now. So pick who you like. Get yourself some decent opportunities there to turn that $200 into even more money. So hit up DraftKings Sportsbook today. Again, use that DNVR code when you sign up to get that amazing $1 to $200 deal. Must be 21 or older. Colorado only. Other terms, restrictions, and conditions apply. $200 is paid out in free bets only. See DraftKings.com/sportsbook for more details. If you have a gambling problem, call 1-800-522-4700. All right. Second period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast. We're getting into our top 10 here. Let's start this one with AJ's list instead of mine. AJ, where are you going with number 10 here?
So I'm going to have Drew Helison lower than probably everybody.
You've never been a believer in Drew, I know.
And I've given him full credit for this year.
Yep.
For taking the big step forward. The big thing here is that people will look at this and say, I have him at 10. But it's really, again, doing this in tiers.
Yep.
I would say all of these guys, I would say 7 through 10, I have in the same tier.
Yeah. I would say just about the same on my list. So
where I think that with Helison, I think Helison's going to run into the Connor Timmins problem, where even if it's best case scenario, he has another really good 2-way year at BC. He signs, he gets into pro hockey, everything goes well. He's probably capped out as a third pairing defenseman in Colorado. On the left side, they have Gerard and Taves and Byram for the foreseeable future. On the right side, it's Makar, but Justin Barron as a potential guy that ends up on their right side as well is the guy that I think probably keeps Helison from getting a chance to really stretch the legs and extend into a more prominent role for the Avalanche. And so that's kind of why I have him at 10. And it's really nothing about him. He had a great year. As a right shot defenseman, he's 6'3". He plays a heavy game. He's mean. He likes to hit people. He was really good at WJCs for the United States. He was really good at BC for the Eagles. Loved the game. Loved the offensive instincts was the biggest thing that really jumped off the ice to me that we hadn't seen previously. Defensively, looked sound as he has his forever.
Yeah,
he's always been pretty good defensively, but with him, he showed offensive instincts, jumping into the play, reading the ice offensively, jumping into open spots. Just in general, being more aggressive, being more confident in the offensive zone. Really, really, really encouraging. as a breakout player, still a long ways to go, especially given that he's going to be coming up in Colorado's system where they want their defensemen to aggressively move pucks, especially with their feet. So that's where I have that's going to be the biggest area where Justin Barron blows him away. Is that Justin Barron and Drew Helison is a good mobile. He's a good skater. He's mobile. He does not. It's not like he's clunky or anything. He's not explosive, but he's a strong skater, and he's good on his feet. But Justin Barron is significantly more dynamic, and that's why he's much higher on my list. Helison, I still need to see the offense more from Helison to really start to believe that. And then obviously we talked about Bocage already. I'm just a bigger believer in him than Rudo.
Yeah, and I mean, again, when we're talking about these in tiers, our differences on Bocage are fairly minor in reality. But
I mean, we're talking about 2 spots on our list, and we see these guys as kind of like
right. They're in that same general area. I do want to hold on a second on Bowers. We'll get to him in a second because he was 10 on my list. But I do want to talk about Helison and Barron's because I actually do have Helison ahead of Barron's on my list. And part of the reason that I have that is because while the two players are quite different, particularly in body type and the way that they do what they do, they both are kind of coming from the same path, right? Both of these guys coming out of the USNTDP, and while Helison's year was significantly more stacked than Barron's was, they're going out into the NCAA, and it's time to see what those kids look like away from the National Development Program. And so far, Helison, his first year, there was a significant lack of offense there, but the second year, I think he started to show what I wanted to see out of him to prove that he can be a well-rounded enough player to make the NHL potentially. With Barron's, I get the excitement there. I'm sure AJ loves the fact that he's so feisty on the defensive end as well. But I could not put him ahead of Helison because I just haven't seen him at the college level yet. And I know USNTDP played a handful of games against college teams, but I need to see him in the college environment and what he brings every week at that level before I really can commit to him. But AJ, I know you're a little bit higher on him, so what are you excited for in his college game?
Well, I think that he actually probably shares more in common with Drew Helison than he does
probably anyone else.
Yeah. Just in terms of
difference,
the big thing is the 5 inches of height that he gives away to Helison is huge. But Barron's plays a strong feisty defensive game.
Should we be specific? We're talking about Sean Barron's, not
Sean Barron's.
Yeah.
And he's a good skater, and I think he'll be a good puck mover. He'll be. I just think he's going to do everything well at the college level. He's just going to be a really good, all around player, kind of like a better defensive version of what we saw Scott Perunovich be. I don't think that he'll be as good offensively, but I'm looking, at especially at DU where they've had a lot of success with these kinds of guys in recent years. I think that they're going to get him in there, and they're going to give him a lot of responsibility early on, and he's going to do a little bit of everything for the Pioneers. And I think that sets Barron's up perfectly because no, he would not be a Will Butcher type. Butcher was a bad skater who needed to get by on IQ and good and great play
defense, basically.
Yeah, and just not. And not nobody has been drafted by Nathan McKinnon. That's not what he does.
We talked about on the show the other day.
We mentioned this yesterday. Yeah, Who needs to do scouting? Just send Nathan McKinnon around to play drop in with all the prospects.
The thing that I really like about Barron's compared to Helison is Barron's ability to move pucks out with his feet.
Yeah, it's a natural fit for how Colorado plays, but it's not like, I mean, we talk about that. It doesn't look like how Girard does it. It certainly isn't anything like what Gale McCarr does.
Obviously,
if you had to compare him more, it's more of like how Devon Taves does it, where it's not as persistent, it's not as dynamic, but it can be just as
it works. Yeah.
And to be honest with you, Devon Taves is probably where Sean Barron's maxes out. Is a similar style of player.
Yep. If you get the absolute most out of him.
Yeah.
So that's kind of the defensive take there. You can see I ended up putting Bowers at 10, even lower than AJ had him. We talked about Ambrosio already. So for Bowers at 10, for me, look, I am still a believer that Bowers can absolutely be an effective NHL player, but given the moves the Avs made this year, they went out and got Maltsev, who can play center. They went out and got Helm, who can play center. They went out and got Wingerly, who allegedly plays center. Every move the Avs made this year just screamed to me that they have no interest in giving Shane Bowers an opportunity in the NHL.
Yep, and that's why he's as low on both of our lists, is because the Avs look disinterested in giving him opportunity, and so it feels like it's hard to rank a prospect highly when it feels like the team isn't involved in him. And he has 0 NHL games played. It just doesn't feel good. And that's in Bowers at this point, I think, is probably like a 4C type at best.
Yep.
And that's a pretty limited upside to be playing next to Logan O'Connor. Great. Yeah, I think he could do the job. I think he should get a chance. I think it sucks that he hasn't. I think he's worthy of that look, and I think he would do fine with it. I just don't think I don't think we're talking about like an ace here.
Right. It's the reality is the ceiling, especially as time drags on more and more without his NHL debut, the ceiling continues to drop.
Yeah. And then they look hadn't been super high since his draft year.
Right.
He was drafted like 4th overall in the Q draft, but way back in the day when he was a big deal where he came from, and then as he's left that nest, the ceiling's just gotten a little bit lower every year.
Yep. It's just kind of the reality of...
Yeah, Bowers turning into Ryan O'Reilly was always a pipe dream.
Yeah, dude, it was hard to ever project that dude as more than like a third liner. But
yeah, he just never produced offense anywhere.
Yep.
So that was
we talked about it the other... I forget if this was on air or off air, but I was talking to you, AJ, and it was like, look, both of us could totally see that guy go into another organization being an everyday NHLer.
Absolutely. There's a smart team is gonna get the Avs to do one of those AHL flips, and the Avs are gonna end up on the wrong end of the Graves Begroff type of swap. Because I think he'll go somewhere. He's gonna end up in freaking Calgary or something, and he's gonna lock it down for them, look just fine, and they're gonna feel great. And the Avs are gonna be like, "Oh, why couldn't he do that for us?" Well, you never fucking gave him a job. You never let him play a game. What do you expect?
Yep, exactly. Pretty much sums up that section. Did we cover? We both had Foodie at 6, right? Which we can save that because he's really more in the tier of the next couple guys.
Yeah, that's fair. We'll save Jean-Luc Foodie for the top 5 conversation because I was making the top 5 and I could have made a really really easy argument to have him there. Yeah,
same. So we'll get to that. First, Legal Pete's. Have y'all had it yet? We've been telling you to go get it on this show for a while now. Need y'all to go get it, all right? They are super delicious. I'm telling you, go get their breakfast burrito. The potatoes, absolutely delicious. You can't go wrong. They have a billion other delicious ones too. If you're into queso, their queso is amazing when you put it on the burrito. They have tons of other options as well, and you get free upgrades on your meals when you bring in a ticket sub from any same day event. So if you're going to the Rockies game, if you're going down to Infinity Park in Glendale, bring your ticket in, get yourself an upgrade on your Illegal Pete's burrito of deliciousness. And then, as I
Is that
mentioned,
its official name? Burrito of deliciousness.
burrito of deliciousness, confirmed. That's my my burrito at Illegal Pete's right there. So, as I mentioned, you can also hit up Infinity Park in Glendale. Coming up, not this weekend, but next weekend, August 20th through the 22nd, the Rugby Town Sevens tournament is here in Infinity Park, and it's one of the best times of the year. 27 teams from around the world are participating, so you get basically, all the major rugby powers in the building to show USA how to play rugby, probably, if I'm being honest. But, maybe USA can put up a good fight. Saturday is the military championship. Sunday is the tournament championship. So take your pick. You can go see whatever you want. They're holding an esports tournament as well. They have a whole giant tent set up with a bunch of arcades and other video game consoles, etc. in the building. It's going to be dope. It's going to be a whole lot of fun. I'm super looking forward to it. Check it out. Highly recommend it. The tickets are super cheap as well. Tickets are $15 per day, or you can get the whole weekend pass for $25. Kids 12 and under are free. So if you want to go make a little family weekend event out of it, super cheap, super fun, super awesome. Highly recommend. You can get access at rugbytown7s.com to grab your tickets. That's RUGBYTOWN, the number 7s.com. Again, $15 ticket for a single day. Check them out. It's going to be a dope weekend. Of course, look, anytime you're talking about rugby, sometimes you have to talk about their weird oblong-shaped ball. Now, whatever your balls look like, Manscaped can get them looking nice. So trim it up.
Even if they are weird and oblong shaped.
Exactly right. Even your weird oblong shaped balls will look much better after a little bit of manscaping. So use the code DNVR to get 20% off. Get the perfect package 4.0 and get yourself looking very nice. Also, of course, they can take care of your weird oblong-shaped face. If you're like me, they can take care of the rest of your weird oblong body, too. They got face shavers, breath mints, deodorant, a little bit of everything to take care of your manicuring of your entire body. Check them out, manscaped.com. Y'all know the drill. Free shipping if you get the perfect package 4.0 with the DNVR code. Third period of the DNVR Avalanche podcast presented by that DraftKings Sportsbook. Let's get into our top five plus foodie, I suppose.
Top five plus foodie.
Yep. I don't know. Pick a list, Kale. I don't care which one you bring up. All right, we're going with, I believe our top five are identical, so it doesn't actually matter.
Yep, they are.
For me, you kind of have Foodie and Ranta in the same tier. You could maybe even put Olausen in that same tier as well.
I would say Olausen, Ranta, and Foodie are all in the same tier of player, because I think that of those, I think Ranta has the most potential to break into as a true top six player. But
he also has the most potential to flop.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that the other guys have more limited upside, but have skill sets that the organization really, really likes. To be honest, that could just be a line.
Yeah, true. Olausen, Ranta, Foodie, put Foodie in the middle of them.
Yeah.
Let's go.
That could just be a third line in a couple of years. If everything goes really well, a second line.
Man, that'd be Olausen rounds out his defensive game a little bit too. That'd be a fun line.
I mean, it'd be a fast line. That's a line with a lot of skating ability, and some good size.
Yeah,
it's not a small line at all.
Yeah, none of them are particularly small. In Ranta's case, look, obviously The talents that he has are obvious. The size, the build is amazing. He has a very good shot. He has the ability. He showed in college to play a little bit of that power forward game, just cut to the net and be better than people. So the excitement is there. The question that has always been the question with him remains the same: is can he think the game at a high enough level to be effective in the NHL?
Yeah, and if they ask him to just play north-south, I think that he's going to be just fine.
Yeah.
But we saw him badly struggle in his couple of limited NHL appearances.
Yep.
Granted, that was a tough ask.
Yeah, to drop him into the playoffs with
it was a good reminder of why that's hard to do.
Yeah.
Because you saw Alex Newhook and look, we think that Alex Newhook is
a baller.
Yeah, and several magnitudes better as a prospect.
Yeah.
And you saw him struggling to find his game.
He kind of figured it out, but
it shows you just how special Cale Makar really did.
To just drop in and be a monster from minute one, yeah.
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 Where and then you see Sampo Ranta have the more traditional, oh my gosh.
He's got some work to do.
Yeah, this is a lot, guys. This game is fast. There's a lot going on. Defensively, I am super lost. It was interesting. That Sampo Ranta got that shot in the postseason. It was fun, but it was also like, why?
He's not ready. Yeah.
Yeah, no. So for the record, there's like a line going down the middle of my microphone that every time I glance down, it looks like a ridge, and I'm just like, what's going on here? And I'm seeing it out of the corner of my eye, and it's just distracting me. It's catching me, and I'm like, so that's why I continue to look at it. Confused,
I did want to circle back to Foodie here because we have Foodie. We both have Foodie at 6 in that kind of top 5 category. And this is a kid that, look, there's a very real possibility that in a year's time he's in the top 3, depending on how this year goes. Because you're talking about a kid who, if it was a normal year, if there was no pandemic, Foodie would have played in the OHL last year and likely would be going back to the OHL this year. And then at the end of that season, we'd be talking about, well, it's time to see him in pro hockey. Instead, as an 18-year-old kid, we got to see him a little bit in Sweden, but mostly in the AHL playing pro hockey. And he was fine. He fit in. He played effective hockey in the AHL, which, say what you want about the taxi squad, still arguably the second hardest league in the world.
Look, he played with some bums, too. He played with the Ryan Wagners of the world as their third-line center. He played with AHL guys, like AHL contracts, AHL dudes, like bums.
Yeah.
And he legitimately, had he played with some real talent, his numbers could have been quite a bit higher because you watched him. You watched his creativity. You watched the elite vision that we saw as a draft prospect. Look, he was a first-round prospect for a reason going into his draft year.
Yep.
The skating is unbelievable. It is high-end NHL caliber skating now, today. The playmaking and the hands and the creativity and all of that is very, very good. The shot is not. It does not have a good shot. Yeah. It's not good at all. Bad shots beat goaltenders every once in a while, and that's how he scores goals. There's not much there. He needs to get stronger. He needs to fill out physically quite a bit. There's a long way to go in that regard. And that'll probably be the thing that could hold him back the most from jumping into the AHL and sticking in the NHL is probably the strength. He needs another probably 2 or 3 years to just physically get there. But his game, parts of his game already, especially offensively, as a play driver, as a creator, as a distributor, as a guy who makes his line mates more intriguing and puts them in good positions. He is a dude that can elevate. And when you talk about him next to like an Alex Bocage in Loveland, there's a natural synergy there that's going to be really, really intriguing. Hell, you put him next to Sampo Ranta.
Just anyone with a good shot. Just stick him next to Foodie and you're feeling good about it.
Exactly.
And this year could be like, obviously, we don't know what's going to happen. But if he has a solid year, gets some opportunity in the AHL to even maybe play some top 6 minutes at times based on injuries, call-ups, whatever, you could be looking at this kid as potentially an outside shot for the lineup in 22-23.
I think there's an outside shot that he sneaks into some NHL games this year.
He has a very solid year, and
especially
and whatever. But
with some of the center issues that they've had, the exemption of him getting to stay in the AHL this year is really important.
It's a rare opportunity for sure.
Now, I don't know how you feel about this, but if they sent him back to the OHL and they said, look, we want you to go put up 110 points. We want you to just go be an offensive dynamo, play on top power play units, and just, play top line minutes and just feast and really hone that offensive game for a year, I'd be good with that too. Because he's likely slotted for another depth role in the AHL. And it's fair to wonder which one is better for him long term.
I feel a lot better about it being in the AHL, especially because they brought Olausen over. I think, and I mean, we don't know. Maybe they tell Olausen to go play in Barrie too. But if they commit to the kids here throughout this lineup, and
they won't, you know it.
I know.
You already know.
I understand what you're saying, and I don't necessarily disagree with it. But I think this year, more than in years past, to a certain extent, they might not have a choice. Now,
they've definitely put themselves in the position where that has to be their bread and butter.
Right.
The meat of their lineup is going to be drafted kids.
Exactly. If they're talking about potentially scratching guys like Foodie or Olausen on any given night, then no, get them out of here. Go to the OHL, please. Don't do anything dumb like that. But scratching Foodie would be a mistake to me in the AHL. He should have every opportunity to play on the third line at minimum every single night. So I think the AHL would be better for him, assuming he gets opportunity. But the OHL would be fine. It wouldn't be super exciting for me. Because, yes, I'm sure he would have plenty to learn, particularly on the offensive side, where he could be the dude every single night. But it's just not against men. It's not against the top competition.
Yeah, I mean, you and I are believers in the AHL as a legitimate development league, but you do start to wonder. Now, the one thing I do really like about the idea of Foodie as the 3C in the AHL is that it probably prepares him for what is a NHL job is going to be.
Role, sure.
Because you say, okay, let's just say it does take him another 2 years to get there. That's the end of Tyson Jost's contract, and we don't know what happens from there. Yep. Maybe Jost has settled into that role, and he's the guy, and it's all good and well, and that's just where they continue to go. And Foodie slots in somewhere else in the lineup. But him getting comfortable in that 3C job could be interesting.
Yep. Okay. Who is next on our lists? Is it just Barron? Well, it's Olausen. Yeah. Okay, we kind of have already talked about him quite a bit.
Yeah, we've talked about all these top guys a lot this week. So Sampo Ranta at 5. He's dope. We like him. There's upside. We'll see. Yep. We want to see more of it in pro hockey. It was a really good, encouraging start, though. I think that they would love to have him in the AHL for a year, barring him popping off in training camp. Yes, Sampo Ranta. Olausen, we talked about. We did a whole show on him on Monday.
Go look at our Olausen show if you want more on him.
So I was surprised that we both had Kaut ahead of Barron. I'm curious as to why you did.
I continue to be a big believer in Coutts' game. Yes, his 3-game stint in the NHL did not look great last year, but when you look at the bulk of his AHL play over last season, he completely dominated that league. He pretty much did everything he could at that level to say that he's done with the AHL.
Yep.
Without getting into the conversation of opportunity in the NHL and our disagreements with the way the Avs organization runs itself in those regards, this is it for me. Count this year, whether he starts in the AHL or not, is either going to prove he can be an everyday NHLer this year, or I don't think it's going to happen with the Avalanche. It's now or never for him. So I'm a believer that it's now. If you're a believer that it's never, I can understand you putting him lower on your list. But if you think it's now, if you look at his AHL play, if you look at his 9 games of NHL play, not this past season, but the one before, the dude is clearly capable of being an effective third liner in the NHL. You just have to give him the leash and believe in it.
Funny enough, man, I think he's the perfect replacement for Jonas Donskoy, because I think he's a dude that could play up in your lineup eventually, but as a third line guy on your right side is probably a better fit. And he's always been a guy where we said you put him with skill and his game is going to find a different level.
He will elevate to his line mates for sure.
Which, we saw it in WJCs when he was on the Czech Republic.
His buddy Netchas a little bit, yeah.
Yeah, he had, so that was the center, and then on the other side was the kid that got drafted by Detroit.
Yeah.
It's killing me now.
His name is
the kid that got drafted by Detroit.
Dude, I can't think of it either.
Philip Zadina.
Thank you.
Yeah, so that was their top line, and Count obviously was like, "Oh, he's not as good. He's not as good as these other two guys, but he's still very good, and he elevated his game." He elevated his game to get there, and
instead of dragging that line down, he moved up to that line's level, right? And
I think that's the important part to remember about him as an NHL prospect, is that we've always felt like once he gets put with better players, he's gonna play better.
Yep.
He's gonna play up to his competition. He's gonna play up to his situation. He's just a classic glue guy. He's your sort of lineup amoeba. He just sort of slides in and does whatever he needs to do.
Yep.
And finds his way into whatever role. It's whatever job he ends up with, I think he'll do fine. But
agreed.
I think he needs to. I think he's better served, and the team is better served, giving him kind of that middle of the road opportunity where it's not the Alex Newhook second line job, but if you put, I love the idea of him next to Nichushkin and Jost. Yeah, I love that idea.
I think he'll have way more success there than playing next to Helm and O'Connor or something like that.
Yeah, absolutely. I absolutely agree with that. It's just a better fit for what he does well.
Yep.
Now the other question, can he compete like those two guys do every night? Because he needs to bring the motor. The motor needs to be turned on and fully engaged, and that's been his big problem here in his NHL looks, is that he has not been consistently engaged.
Yep.
And that makes you wonder: does he love playing the game? Is it his? You start to ask all these deeper questions. But in terms of what he's accomplished in the AHL. He's done what's been asked of him. He needs to graduate. He needs to move on.
I will say an argument I do like to make against that is every dude on your lineup can't be a Logan O'Connor who's full motor and this isn't meant to be offensive, but no brain, right? O'Connor is just see puck, skate to puck. There's no
and
ahead there.
With O'Connor though, that's where his skill level stops. Sure. He's not capable of doing more than that in the NHL. We've seen him at the AHL level be more than that. But in the NHL, he has figured out that if he's going to be successful, that's what he has to do.
Totally. And
now what Count hasn't figured out is that what he needs to do to be successful is do that, but also engage the rest of his skill set.
It starts with the motor and then goes from there, right?
It's the number one thing that NHL coaches look for. If you go out there and you bust your ass on every single shift and you don't make mistakes, you will get opportunities. They will see, once they feel comfortable that you're not going to screw them and lose them a game by being out there and you not knowing what's going to happen, safety is what coaches go for. They want guys that they understand what they're getting out of them. And that is why we see less skilled players make it over more skilled, more cerebral guys, because they see the motor, they see the engagement. It was one reason why TJ Tynan got all those games, because he was the master of being a half step slow to every single battle, but it looked like he was involved in it. And when you see that, and it's just like, oh, well, at least he's trying. I like this guy. He's working hard. He's really blah, 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 right? Okay, great, whatever. But you need to see that has to happen with a guy like Kaut. And then he's got to engage the rest of his skill set.
Sure.
Now, when it comes to Newhook, he just needs to keep doing what he was doing already in the postseason. He's on his way.
Fine. Newhook doing fine.
Yep.
That dude looks ready at this point.
Yeah, he is on his way. He had 3 points in 6 regular season games, 2 points in 8 playoff games, very limited minutes. He was 16 points in 12 games at BC, 9 points in 8 games for the Eagles. All of this is just to say he's ready to rock. The Alex Newhook's not going to be on this list next year.
Yep.
Justin Barron's going to be on the top of this list next year.
Yep.
We're not going to have 15 prospects because they have
no draft picks. Which we can touch on Justin Barron really quickly, because I think his year after I don't know if I'd call it a disappointing WJC, but certainly a weak WJC out of Barron.
It's disappointing.
Sure. But at the QMJHL level and his very quick stint at the AHL level, he did everything he needed to do this year.
Erased that WJC performance completely.
Yep.
For me, his 7 AHL games significantly more telling than his 7 WJC games.
Yep. Against
he looked
professionals, he was
good
in the AHL. Yep.
He looked good in the AHL, jumping into the play, transitioning pucks out of his own zone. And for a guy that's 6'2" and 200 already and moves the way that he does, to see that kind of offensive instincts jumping off the ice, as well as a guy who did not struggle defensively with the speed of the game at all, he adjusted immediately. Yep. It was really, really encouraging. Now, I want to see him against the real AHL and not the compromised version of the AHL.
Of course.
Same goes for Foodie, because there were an awful lot of kids in that league last year. So I think the skill level might have been a little bit higher, but the consistency was way lower. And so I want to see how those cats do against the real AHL, against a full AHL. But tons to be encouraged about for the Eagles this year. This could be as fun as the Eagles ever get.
There is a world where, depending on how things shake out, that by the end of the year, Justin Barron is the first D call-up.
If they're depending on injury issues between Ryan Murray and Eric Johnson, Justin Barron might just be an absolute regular by the end of the year. Things would obviously have to really go his way, and he'd have to earn that spot. But it's not unrealistic that Justin Barron's playing for the Avs come postseason.
Yep. So, still quite a bit of exciting stuff at the top of that list for the Avs.
Yep.
Obviously, in the middle, I think we both kind of have our guys that we like. And then you get past 10, and it's kind of whatever happens. But look, for a team that is really starting to get into the thick of their window of trying to be champions in this league, their prospect pool today still looks pretty damn good.
Yep. Right now, it looks good. Oh, the AHL package is totally worth it.
Yeah, their new package is unbelievably worth the value now.
Yeah. AHL TV is between the quality of the product and the price point.
Yep.
I'm curious to see what happens with the CHL. Now
we're
that
supposed to be leaving New Alien, right?
thank God the what was it, like the $250 package
Yeah,
for one league?
They were nonsense.
Dude, it was like $1,000 to watch all of the leagues and the postseason. It was so expensive.
Yep, it was really, really bad. But hopefully, theirs come to a more reasonable price point as well. You saw a bunch of teams last year improve their broadcasting hardware as well.
Yeah, there's still a couple. Obviously, San Jose is always going to be a challenge while they're in that building.
Yeah.
But you know,
is what it is.
Anyway, AHL TV, super great deal. Free advertising for them.
Shout out them. They're dope. In any case, AJ, any final thoughts on our prospect list here before we get out of here?
No, it's a good list. It's middle of the road in the NHL. If you add Bo and Byram on there, it's probably back to being top 10
ones, yeah.
Because Byram, I still think projects as a top pairing defenseman, but we'll see. A long way to go there with that kid.
I mean, every kid's got a long way to go until they're there, right?
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I think the gap between prospect and top pairing, top line, is bigger than college to like the fourth line.
I would agree.
I
mean, how many fourth line forwards did we see play 6 minutes a night for the Avs last year and not hurt them? Like,
yep. Well, I mean, the Dan Renouf and Kyle Burrows and Keaton Middleton and all these guys that got in NHL games on defense and were just fine.
Yep. So I guess we'll leave you on that note. Thank you, everyone, for watching, listening, however you consume the podcast. We appreciate y'all. Be sure to like and subscribe to the video here on YouTube. Always helps us out a bunch when y'all do that. I hope you all have a great rest of your Friday and weekend. We will have a pod on Monday. It will not be live, but we will do a live premiere on YouTube. So if the chat wants to hang out and talk, you can do that. You just won't be able to talk directly to us.
What do we have scheduled for next week? We are doing snake drafts of hockey logos.
Best team since 05.
Yeah, best post lockout teams, and then you and I did a draft of our favorite players.
Currently in the league, yeah.
Yep, favorite current NHL players.
So there you go. Like, subscribe. We will be back live in the latter half of next week as well. So hope to see you there. Until then, we will talk to you beautiful people later.